Welcome back to the Global Sim Racing Channel's coverage of the Major Series European region, the Daytona 2.4. We apologize sincerely for technical difficulties. As to update you on what's going on, we are approaching 90 minutes to go on the clock at the moment. Taking a look at the battle for fourth position, Andrei Rechkovic and Riley Thompson have been going back and forth for this position for the past few laps. There have been, however, several drivers who have been involved in some incidents. Trevor Bobrovsky hit the back end of his teammate David Baker after a spin in turn 6 just 5 minutes ago. That damaged David H. Baker's car to the point where he had to take an early pit stop. As well, several drivers ended up having some incidents, including David Barriclow, who was in this fourth position before the back and forth started to intensify before trouble ensued. Now, these drivers are in the midst for a majority of the field approaching their first pit stops. The prototypes have already completed their set service. Just about everyone in the entire field did not take tires, Peter. Now, the GTEs and GT3s, they're approaching their window in the next 5 to 10 minutes plus on the clock. So the fuel windows are approaching for a majority of the classes, but a majority of the prototypes are currently on cycle in the midst of their second stints of the race so far.
Yeah, this is the part of the race where it all becomes to be a little bit more jumbled up, and it kind of becomes one constant flow of traffic, and a little bit harder for the drivers, unless they've got a very good spotter, to kind of have a feel of where all the different classes are. So here you just got to try and keep your nose clean and keep going, but still, this GTE battle still batters on between Ross Banfield and Tim Claessens, but no sign of Harrod in the Porsche so far. He's about 2.5 seconds further down the road. So they've, while we've just been off the air there, Banfield and Claessens have just pulled that little bit from Harrod in the Porsche. But these guys have been racing super hard and super aggressive, and keeping it up that way. There's always a risk of a little bit of contact, and Tim Claessens, he's been there the whole race. He's been in second place, right on the gearbox of Banfield, but he's not been able to make the move by yet.
He's been just saving fuel, to say the very least, throughout this run. And Christian, you talked about him a little bit earlier tonight, where he does have some experience racing against you. He actually took a year off throughout 2020 and is looking to be back with a vengeance, as his team said, for personal victories, but mostly for the team win overall for his grouping. This is again the Caregiver TFR Daytona car, Tim Claessens, we're talking about here.
Yeah, I remember having a very tight battle with him at Bathurst in the V8s actually, and that was a whole lot of fun. I think actually something happened to him in that race which ended that battle a bit prematurely, which was a shame. But up until that happened, that was really fun. And obviously here he's proven again that he can contend. I've got to think that he's going to pit about at least one lap later than Ross Banfield does, because otherwise this whole idea of sitting behind Banfield is really pointless. Because if he has more pace and he's going to run the same number of laps, he should try and get by and go out front. But if he's actually saving fuel, which I strongly suspect he is, then I think we'll see him run at least one lap longer.
Now he's been running behind him and lifting off down the front straightaway for that fuel save throughout this entire run. Live timing and scoring is available, by the way, at GSRC.tv for today's action. Keep up with your favorite teams and drivers throughout the racetrack today. As you can see, though, some more prototypes ready to say hello. Dawson Brock, Henry Bennett are among those cars ready to lap them as well. Peter Rod is also still in the midst of those cars. He's lost a bit of the back touch to these top two, in fact, at the moment. Peter, taking a look at that prototype, in particular, Dawson Brock. Everyone's favorite Dawson from Dawson's Brock. You get where I was going with that either way. As he goes to the outside.
I do, JP. Yes, absolutely. And well, yeah, he blasts by. He'll certainly be the GT car's favorite there, because in that number 82 Grizzly TFR Daytona car, just caught on the banking where the P2 car has such a big pace advantage and able to get by completely safely. That's just a dream scenario there. So Yep, it's as you can see, these P2 cars are just touching towards 200 miles an hour. In fact, they tip into the bus stop at over 190, which is a scary thought. But coming into the braking zone in turn one, you can really lean on those carbon brakes, and it is amazing the stopping power that this car has. It's an amazingly thoroughbred machine. Magnesium wheels on it as well, so lightweight wheels, carbon brakes, and the performance it's capable of is amazing. At the moment, it's the Tasca who's mastering it best.
Absolutely. Keep in mind, their fellow teammates have had some ups and downs in this respective class. We mentioned David, who is one of their big team pickups for the Grizzly TFR Le Mans drivers, who have had some ups and downs. Take a look at some of the others meanwhile. We mentioned Barraclough and his success in this event in the past. He's looking to hold on to 6th spot. Teammate Joshua Wolf getting a bit of a pull from behind. We'll see if he goes for the move, and does. And this is with traffic 3 wide into the corner. Still able to complete it in time as they reach the back end of Tom Railing a lap down.
Wow, that was bold. That was very bold indeed. Just popped out of the draft of his teammate, and there was a BMW M4 GT3 car in the way, but they all got through cleanly. Good heads-up driving from all concerned there. And yeah, you've got to have some trust in your fellow competitor to pull that sort of stuff off.
And I have to say, Christian, this partnership has worked out very well. Of course, Torque Freak Racing and Grizzly Motorsports, prior to last year, known for their successes separately in this series and being stalwarts before they decided to work together for this campaign with their respective drivers, and it's worked out well for them. At the time, they were one of the top contenders for the team championship. Pit stops underway, though, for the GT3s involving some of those cars, including Eric Mickey.
Yeah, both Eric Mickey and Sakowicz came down that time, and in the BMWs I'm actually keeping an eye. Sam Harper was able to extend out 1 lap longer, as was Cordell Colon, so it looks like there has been a little bit of fuel saving going on for these guys. I don't suspect we're going to see anybody taking tires, and that pit stop time suggests that they did not, so I think we'll see everybody try and get to the end on a single set here.
I saw Eric Mickey, sorry guys, Eric Mickey was up on the jacks there.
Yeah,
to taking tires,
That's going to be interesting, Christian, because Mickey went 1 minute and 9 seconds. Sakowicz 30 seconds in his pit stop.
He's never going to make that time back. That's a very strange decision. I was actually keeping an eye on Sakowicz, kind of assuming that Mickey wasn't going to take tires. But yeah, I can't explain that. I really can't, because he's never going to make that time back. There's just no question about it. I said that we might see some of the GT3 drivers struggle towards the very end of the race, but that's the very end of the race, and especially in a situation such as this where the track temperature is only dropping as we move further into the night, the tires will only last longer and longer as the race goes on. So I don't see how Mickey's strategy is going to work here. I think he's actually just lost the race.
That's really interesting, absolutely. And Peter, I'm almost wondering the thought process may be, if it ends up going the way I think it's about to go here for this, if they're electing maybe not take the tires on the next pit stop and taking the tires now and to just double stint to the end after they have to top off the gas?
Well, it's going to be a fascinating storyline. We know that Mickey has got the pace advantage. That's been quite clear in the opening phase of the race. The only, playing devil's advocate slightly, I mean, the only thing it might be is that when it does get to the end of the race, of course, that's when things get really tense and really tight, and when the points, of course, are handed out, and maybe Mickey wants to have the little bit keener tires, a little bit tires with a bit more life in them for that last kind of phase of the race dogfight. That's really the theory I could sort of volunteer, but we're only going to know as we progress to the next stop if his rivals decide to take those tires then.
Yeah, and that's the key thing. We've been told there is the potential of the triple stint on some of the tires. Keep in mind, some of the GTEs have also come into pit. Peter Ronzare finished off his service. Ross Banfield's come in. Tim Clayson's, as expected, did go an additional lap. Ryan Mayer, Rob Gall also came in this previous lap as we look at some of the prototypes at the moment. Wolf has been able to pull away from David Barraclough, where Barraclough, remember, who won his respective class last year. Wolf, of course, the team manager for Grizzly TFR, coming off a Daytona 500 win last year, Peter, 4th place in the points, 5th season in the majors, looking for the goal of a top 3 this year.
Yeah, and of course the Daytona 500, the biggest race you see here at the Daytona International Speedway, so intertwined with the history of NASCAR, and to win that race and also run quickly in this type of racing is mighty, mighty impressive.
Tim Claeson's now in for his respective pit stop, as we'll see what he elects to do. It was 32 to 34 seconds for a majority of the field so far. So, looking like the double stint is in for a majority of the drivers so far.
Yeah, looks like it. No tires for Tim Claeson's, just filling up with fuel right now, and it just feels like forever. You're sitting there waiting. It's a big tank in that Corvette. Of course, the first proper mid-engined Corvette race car for Corvette racing, built in hand in hand with the street car, the Corvette Stingray, with that hydroformed chassis. Very special bit of kit, and dominated his first season in IMSA last year.
Oh, trouble for David Barriclough. He is off the racetrack. The 18 machine from 7th spun around trying to pass by some traffic. He is just going right by that pit exit. He had been trying to pass Eric Mickey, of all people, before he looped it around in the middle of the racetrack. Several cars had to dodge him. Let's take a look at the replay. This was chaotic, Christian, for every class.
Yeah, I was actually just catching that as we were kind of going by it. And you see right here, he was in that horrible situation where he was stuck in the middle of the racetrack pointing the wrong way. And that's the worst possible thing that can happen to you, especially when you can't see around the corner. And you see he dived to the inside of Mickey, got it done, but then went around whilst he was just about clearing him on corner exit.
Yep, Richie Hearn just barely avoided that as well.
Yeah, Richie Hearn in the 70 car here. Of course, Richie got on the podium at the Indianapolis 500 in his debut back in 1996, which still to this day is the fastest ever Indy 500 for qualifying, but we've just missed it there, unfortunately, folks. But good heads-up driving there from Richie, a man who knows a thing or two about diving through traffic at high speed.
Yeah, that was a little bit dicey, to say the very least. His teammate Tom Drelling, for reference sakes, by the way, has not had the best of days. In fact, his teammate just came in for a 3rd time this race. This is something to mention, by the way, where drivers will have a penalty such as this if they receive 20 incident points, Christian, on the race. Every 20 incident points overall, they have to serve a drive-through, essentially. Tom Drelling apparently may have hit that. Incident count limit 35 for today.
Yeah, and it's quite easy to do that. Pretty much pick up a 1x incident every single time through there if you be very aggressive with the curbs. So it doesn't surprise me that even only 40 laps into the race, we're seeing drivers actually picking up those penalties.
We have had a swap in the lead for the GTEs of note. It's Tim Claeson who is now in the race lead by a couple seconds over Ross Banfield with that additional lap. And he's right now turning quick times around this circuit.
Yeah, we saw Tim Claeson's, of course, was the guy who sat in the shadow of Ross Banfield for the entirety of the opening stint, about an hour or so, all the way in the draft, and that will have definitely improved his fuel consumption for Tim Claeson's over Banfield, and that gave him an edge, which allowed him to hop Banfield in. We saw it, didn't we, guys? He was pretty impatient to almost look like he wanted to move past, and then decided to back out of it during the first stint. But now that Tim Claeson's has got the fresh air, he's hitting the afterburners in that C8 vet.
We've seen how tight the pit stop windows are, just the raw pace coming into play. Of course, a long-time sim racing veteran. We've seen him perform in many different levels in the past. Someone you can always depend on for these types of races, especially in endurance-style events. 50 estimated laps to go for this respective class, by the way, on the racetrack at the moment. There is a close battle starting to form up with the prototypes of note. At the other end of the horseshoes, coming out of the horseshoes of reference, Marcus Romner, Riley Thompson, Andrei Rechkovic are curling near bumper to bumper. So things are getting intriguing around this racetrack, all while Claeson's having a lot of space to work on. Let's take a look towards some of these prototypes. Wolf is trying to close up to them. Romner is currently in the midst of traffic with Thompson currently a few car lengths up the road. Christian, it's been dicey so far for Thompson. A good recovery for him after that incident early on with Dallas Pataska.
Yeah, I think he's actually done a great job to kind of get his head back down, and obviously pointing at the tire wall so early on in the race after contending for the win essentially is pretty disappointing and not what you want. But to be able to recover as well as he has, and to look at realistically a chance of getting third place here, as he just simply takes the position away, just not contested at all right there.
And it looked very easy, in fact. Thompson's still dealing with a bit of that damage on the back end of the race car, Christian. Do you feel that's going to impact him at all for the rest of this race, especially since it's right essentially where, I believe it's where, a little bit where the diffuser exhaust would be, right square with the back wing?
Yeah, it's probably going to lose him a little bit of straight line speed, but I guess not really that much. It might look visually worse than it actually is in a physics sense, because he had no problems there executing that pass. His lap times look good, so I don't think it's hurting him all that much, actually.
The thing is he's 34 seconds behind the race leaders, is the crazy thing. He's just not been able to get through the traffic as well compared to the others so far to get back up to Pataska and company. So we look at Brajkovic, who's now in the next car trying to attack the 81 machine.
Yeah, and just an update on GTE, guys. Banfield losing the tail of Tim Klessens, and just shows you that in the clean air, Klessens has got that advantage. So he must have been fuel saving hard in the opening stint, just sitting in the shadow of Banfield. Here's your GTE leader going past one of the GT3 front runners, one of the pit stop BMW GT3s of Eric Mickey, who is playing. He's rolling the dice, isn't he, Christian, with those new tires? We're going to find out in the next stop if anyone's going to try the same thing.
His only chance right now is to just push as hard as he can to try and make up that gap that he's inherently had by taking tires, because really he needs to be averaging about 0.5 to 0.6 of a second faster than everybody else in the class to make up for that disadvantage that he's given himself. And I've actually been just trying to work out what the strategy play is right now in the GT3 class, and a couple of drivers really extended out that first run. Sam Harper and Ryan Walker are able to go actually out to 33 laps on that first run, so a lap longer than I even thought was possible, which is quite an interesting deal, because it means that their last pit stop for the splash and dash will be very, very short compared to the other drivers who pit on lap 31 and 32. And Sakowicz looks like he's tried to take his splash and dash early, because his pit stop time is time stationary in the box is 11 seconds quicker than anybody else in the class.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, I was about to say, it almost looked exactly like that, which was the process we were discussing a little bit, Christian. And how do you feel that could play out potentially if you do it early, like that splash and dash, and then take the long stop late?
Actually be a play to try and give yourself a little bit more tire life, because a lot of the other drivers seem to have come in not taking tires. I suppose if you're very confident in the fuel numbers that you need to split that last pair of runs essentially into two even runs, that could give you a little bit of an advantage in tire life, because you won't be carrying as well the second run, but the first on the old tires, so to speak. And that might be his play here. That he's just thinking, hey, if I carry a little bit less weight in the second run, it might actually translate into better performance in the third run. Even though he's going to give that time back, because he can't outrun physics. He has to use the same amount of fuel as everybody else.
We're following along with the prototypes at the moment, and we're talking about this a little bit before, Christian, where do you potentially see tires being taken at all for the prototypes as well, with the strategies coming to play on the GT3 side? Do tires come into play for the prototypes tonight?
I don't think prototypes, but I think there's the potential for a set of rear tires to come into play. That's about an extra 12 seconds in the pit stop, so that I think you can make up on track, but it'll just be a question as to if we see him.
Keep in mind that was a viable option for those tuning in for the Pro Invitational race for the IMSA drivers here in the daytime over the past weekend. That was on Sunday afternoon. In that respective race were several drivers who have worked with some of the competitors here in the past even. We're trying to race around this circuit. Thompson around some of the traffic, able to get by some of that of note as well. Dawson Brock is an issue in the bus stop. He has now had to pull into the pit lane, so Dawson Brock, now with significant damage to the 82 car, is now off the circuit at the moment. The battle side by side a little bit. that respective grouping. Runer, that time letting Rajkovic right on by.
GTE class, the gap looking pretty steady now between Claessens and Banfield, both settling into their respective paces now in the middle of this second stint as well. And Pete Harrod's not too far back in the Porsche 911 RSR, so he'll be right there if any of these two Corvettes hit troubles. But interesting point about the prototypes with the rear tyres. I mean, obviously this LMP2 prototype's got a lot of horsepower, and obviously all through the rear wheels. I would think that the guys that are going to try and stretch all 4 tyres all the way to the end, those rear tyres are going to be dead by the end. And I think, as Christian said, it's definitely going to be worth it going for those rears. But interesting battle here appearing in the GT3 category. And we were talking about the fuel saving as well. Ryan Walker, you do know that Ryan's Scottish, like me. With us saving fuel and saving resource and therefore money is a bit of a speciality here to talk about again.
Yes, indeed, and it looks like a car off the track. That's Henry Bennett. Henry Bennett from Kinetic Racing's had an issue. That was after he lost grip in the back end of the tires, believe, in turn 1. He's back and rolling, though. So a mistake from Henry Bennett, known for his skills in the open wheel cars.
See him passing the outside of the GTE car and probably just ended up a little bit late on the brakes and tried to get it pulled up, but just not able to, and looped it around. Very, very easy to do in any car really here, but especially so in the prototype if you snatch a front brake.
So he ends up going around and loses a little bit more time of note. Dawson Brock not able to get back on the racetrack after that aforementioned issue that happened at the bus stop a couple laps ago. But to get back towards that saving discussion, I have to say, so far it's been a good run for Sam Harper in this respective race, Christian, where he's been able to save on behind with Cordell Cologne right now, and we've seen him last year when he raced against the pro drivers as one of the sportsman's drivers be really competitive. And as mentioned at the top of the broadcast, 8 sportsman victories.
Yeah, obviously a driver who was getting it done in sportsman last year, and looks like he stepped up to pro really quite well right now. He was one of the few who was able to extend out that stint that first time round, so I think he's trying to do the same again. I'm a little bit unsure as to how he's ended up behind Cordell here, but I think it's all part of his plan, because he's just been really kind of closing the gap to the leader throughout the race in strategy sense. So it's interesting to see a driver play it out like this, but definitely not been involved in any incidents and still in contention.
See some of the traffic going right on by as Rowley Thompson now has been reeled right back in by Rajkovic. Rajkovic still not able to get the run quite yet to make a move yet in this machine, and just electing to stay single file once more in this grouping here. Approaching 1 hour to go on the clock, and these drivers are approaching stops. How about a dive to the inside, though? Thompson gives him the space. Change for third.
Yeah, classic move there at the International Horseshoe. Just dive it up the inside, tuck it in, and then they go through the kink flat out. And yeah, the number 99 car there of Rajkovic in the Huiskink-Veld backed machine. Lots of tongue twisters, not only his team name, but his second name as well.
And for Rajkovic, keep in mind, someone based out of Austria, competitive sim racer for many years, has won in various different series across the iRacing platform with this respective organization, also has raced in real life in open wheel cars, actually has a full-on motion rig set up for his respective car, and these cars expected to come in. Dallas Pataska in for service. So pit stop window is open, Christian, for the prototypes. Expecting potentially 23 laps total of the distance, maybe one more, maybe two more overall, possibly.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be about one more with maybe a little bit of a stretch in there, so we'll just have to keep an eye on that. But definitely not easy for these prototype guys to kind of figure out a strategy for this race. Obviously, they're pitting a lot more often than, say, our GTEs and GC3s, where the pit stop strategy is relatively fixed. Speaking of GC3, pit stops again.
There's your tires.
We see Dallas taking tires, which makes sense, I think. I think if you're going to take tires, you take them about halfway through the race. You definitely don't hang around and wait until the very end when you've kind of already burnt your original set off, and you're really just kind of making a recovery drive at that point.
You can already see those back tires really swirling on around as he's off the jacks, off and away goes Dallas Pataska, 55 seconds on the jacks that time. So, we haven't talked too much about the car in second spot, the 98 machine. Mike Newson has been very quietly running in that spot all race long, Peter. Just has been running it within about 6 seconds of Pataska's pace.
He has, yeah. Now we've got him coming into pit lane now. A little pinch at the brakes, just locking up slightly coming into pit lane. Hopefully got it slowed down in time to get that pit lane speed limiter on. In he comes. Well, he'll be taking a full slosh of fuel, but what we really want to know is he going to take tires? Is he going to mirror Pataska's strategy? I would suggest that he will do, but we'll keep an eye on him now as he comes into his pit stall. It's an amazing place, but the pit lane at Daytona, and when you see these, I had the great privilege of watching the Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac DPI coming in for a couple of its first pit stops of the Rolex 24 from the pit wall, and when they do the burnout to get a bit of generator, a bit of heat in the tires, my goodness me, it makes the ground shake. It's fantastic.
Off and away, no tires, yes. So he's electing to go a bit of different strategy here, Christian. This may be an interesting move.
Yeah, this is definitely going to push Pataska into making an effort to catch back up, because obviously there's a real chance that he's not going to take tires for the rest of the event now.
Yeah, it puts him in a bit of a box as Pataska drives by Thompson, Richie Hearn, George Gruber, who are all in the pit boxes. Dalwin actually coming in as well to those respective cars. So Rejkovic, Rumner, Wolf yet to pit in front of them. Valverde has also recovered inside the top 5 after having to take a fast repair early on in this race. So Valverde continuing his recovery drive after a lap 1 incident, and he nearly snaps it around to the West Horseshoe. Perfect timing.
So we're really getting into the business end now, and of course we're approaching the point in about 10 minutes or so, that kind of critical point where both of the GTE and the GT3 classes can make their pit stop and get to the end if they fill a full fuel fill. There's a mouthful for you. But we see Ross Banfield, he's just sort of just edging out ever so slightly. Tim Claessen's just putting in a couple of hundreds here, a couple of hundreds there, but it's sitting at about 5 seconds. However, we of course saw Tim Claessen's getting the jump in the first pit stops by virtue of his fuel saving in the first stint. He has definitely not been fuel saving this time around. He's been pushing really hard. So you never know, guys. It could come back to Ross Banfield a bit.
So Christian?
Yeah, I actually think it could, because the thing is, it only takes one prototype or one GT3 to slow Claessen's up, and then Banfield's back within draft range. But I think this is smart by Claessen's, because this whole pit stop cycle was really an opportunity to get a break between the two cars and to really get some kind of advantage going. And it's situations like that are really how you win races, where if you're tied to someone in terms of draft luck like they were that first run, you know that realistically there is no opportunity to just drive away from them. You're too close on pace. You can't do that.
Several drivers still in the pit lane. You can see Joshua Wolf really trying to prepare himself for a launch on the jacks. Valverde, you see in the backdrop, again, that slightly different cycle and strategy with some of his trouble. Just went up on his jacks. Barriclough is also up on his jacks. Richie Hearn had originally not taken tires, but he has come down a second time now in the past 2 laps. So Richie Hearn with a bit of problems for the Elite West Chrome car. That takes him off cycle for now. Puteklis did not take tires as well. Pataska took tires as seen. Thompson took tires on their respective services. Rejkovic and Romner now in for the respective stops as well, you see. So various strategies coming in now as the top 2 on track are now in for the respective service here, Peter. We'll see if they elect to go and take the tires here for their respective stops.
Yep, let's keep an eye on them then. We see Richie Hearn gets back going again. no tyres for him. So something strange going on there with Richie having to come back into the pit stop. Maybe a penalty, possibly, maybe a stop and go or something of that ilk. But Dallas Pataska, here he goes. He's got quite a bit of GT3 traffic to worry about here, but he looks on the charge. And he's now up into second position. One stop to go for all the classes now, but the P2s will expect them in around 35 to 40 minutes to go. The GT cars, they could be in any time from 5 minutes from now.
Pataska has cycled 14 seconds behind Dinesen on the racetrack. As a result, Rajkovic took tires. Romner did not. So various strategies have broken up some of the position battles for Pataska. He's going to need to close up a ton of time through this stint while taking it near 3 wide with some of the Bombshell Racing Team cars. Off and away he goes. Ran a 1:33.6 last time by. Dinesen ran a 1:35.319 last time by. A difference of about 2 seconds, Christian.
Yeah, I got to think that Dinesen was caught up with a lapped car right there, because there's realistically no way he's lapping that much slower. We saw he was pretty close to Pataska's pace in the beginning half of the race. So I think he was just caught up with somebody as he puts in a 34.8. But it is going to be interesting to see what the difference in pace between these two drivers is, because 14 seconds is definitely a viable distance to catch with an hour to go. But at the same time, it's also not trivial either. I'd say this was pretty much a sure thing for Dallas if he was within 4 to 5 seconds. But 14 seconds, that's a little bit more. That's a little bit of a challenge, definitely.
Not going to be as easy, absolutely. Especially keep in mind, track temp is still on the fairly cool side, Christian. 74 degrees Fahrenheit at the moment, 72 is the air temp. So it's still a bit more on the cooler end, as a lot more traffic you see. Dallas Pataska able to get on through, lost him a bit of time, but it's back within 13 seconds or so in the infield.
Yeah, track temperature coming down is definitely going to help the drivers trying to make this on a single set of tires. The other thing is, the track has obviously rubbered in quite significantly since the start of the race, and we tend to see, especially in oval racing, that the first run is always the hardest on the tires, and then it gets easier from that point onwards. So I think we're going to see the same thing here, but that's also something to keep an eye on and keep in mind as a driver and as a team, because you can't, in a race like this, the LMPs, it's a little bit different because they've got more than 2 pit stops, but in terms of, say, the GT classes, they'll have all been trying to get a read on what they're going to do in terms of tire strategy off their first stop in the box, and it's not really enough information to make the call. So it's a little bit of a judgment call to make, and also a little bit of guesswork in terms of whether you think you can do the race on a single set of tires, knowing that the first run is going to be the hardest on them.
That's why the preparation comes in, right, Peter? Because a lot of these teams are also preparing for the Daytona 24, the war before. You get all these laps in, and it's important for this series too, to get as much information and data as possible.
Absolutely, that's when being in a good team is so critical nowadays in the sim racing world. To be able to be successful as an independent is incredibly tough, because you're doing it, like you say, all that data gathering. You're doing it on your own. Whereas if you're in a good team, you're of course working together, tuning that setup in, and of course, as always, surrounding yourself with the best people, whether that be drivers, engineers, or whatever. It really helps, and well, when you're surrounded by top level drivers, you raise your game for sure, and especially with the amount of testing and practice that these guys.
And Marcus Romner's punted off a car. David H. Baker hit in the back end by a prototype, as that was right as Marcus Romner, who is 3rd place, was trying to get through some of the traffic. So tempers are flaring. Ray Partridge also had been dove in underneath the previous corner and has not been too happy. Let's take a look at what happened here, and you'll see a little bit of a bump right there.
Yeah, that's not really anything that can be said there on the GT3 spot. The GT3 was clearly holding the inside line. Roma just decided he was going there anyway.
Yeah, tempers flaring a little bit there. as Rumner is still 38 seconds back here. Top runners, Pataska is now within 12 seconds. Riley Thompson is currently 12 seconds back of these respective cars on the racetrack. Speaking of cars, just in front of them, Cologne and Harper still bumper to bumper. Harper continuing to save still.
Yeah, Harper's on an absolute economy drive here. I keep watching this battle thinking that he's going to try and take the second place back, but to be honest, he never looks interested in it. He's lifting off pretty much at the flag stand to try and save some fuel. And I think it's a good strategy because that first run, he was able to go out to 33 laps. So the second one, he should be able to get out to 66, which really means that his end run is probably going to be in the 20 to 24 lap region.
See some of the traffic trying to cut to his outside. Marcus Rohner, in fact, as well. So it's going to be interesting how this all plays out for Sam Harper, looking for a podium in the first race of the season. Potentially is a near bit of contact. Owen Mites. Bit near scrapey with Cordova Cologne's left doors.
Just looking back at Ryan Walker and Eric Mickey just at the back, just not too far behind on the circuit. You'll just see them at the back of shot there on the high banks as well. Ryan Walker in fourth, but remember Mickey's got those slightly better tyres, and you can see that this, of course, gets in the draft. He's got those better tyres. He can lean on the brakes that little bit more. This BMW's got wonderful change of direction, really nimble, and through he goes. And well, Eric Mickey made that look easy, but that's a good demonstration of maybe it gives one example of why Eric Mickey decided to take those tyres. But is it going to be enough? As you mentioned, Christian, he's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I think the effective gap actually between Sakowicz and Mickey is in the region of about 17 seconds. Obviously, there's going to be a bit of a difference in this last pit stop because we saw Sakowicz take 10 seconds less worth of fuel. So he's going to have to pay that back. And currently, the actual on-track gap between them is about 27 seconds. So it's 17 seconds for Mickey to run down in terms of raw pace. I still don't see how he's going to do that. Just looking at average paces, he's not quick enough to make that happen.
Now, right now, 1:45.4 last time by. That's with some of the traffic for Eric Mickey. Sakowicz 1:45.7 for him on the stopwatches. Under an hour to go on the clock. They have an estimated total of 34 to go this time by, approaching the fuel mark to make it to the end in the next little bit or so for these respective cars, and the strategy can open up from there. See how things play out, to say the very least, in this one.
We're now into the window for the GT cars as well. Both GT3 and GTE could come in now and take their fuel fill and make it to the end. So who's going to try and break the sequence? Who's going to throw the dice here? Tim Claessens has had a brilliant second stint here, really laying down some really top pace in that Corvette C8R. At the moment, he has a 5.2 second advantage from Banfield and also in the Corvette C8R, but he's got, I think this is Richie Hearn coming around. Yes, it is, in the number 70 car in the prototype, but Richie is showing some good heads up there, just waiting his turn to go by. And having to be a little bit more forceful when required, but good heads up stuff, and through he goes, the former Toyota Formula Atlantic champ.
Richie Hearn, also a very stellar broadcaster as well, did a lot of stuff with IMSA for iRacing side of things a few months ago, as Dallas Pataska in range to potentially lap Richie Hearn as well. That's how quick the satellite racing driver has been today. Your race leader for the prototypes, or rather in second for the prototypes, by 9 seconds to Thieneson. Then, at the moment, Tim Claessens leading his respective class in the GTEs. Then in the GT3s, it's Sakowicz currently in the lead over Cologne and Sam Harper on the racetrack. Christian, what are you keeping an eye on here for these closing stages, especially with the blistering pace being set by our top runners in strategy?
Really, all just keeping an eye on who's going to take tyres at this last pit stop, who isn't, and in terms of how aggressive people are going to be with fuel, because there's going to be a couple of drivers out there, I'm sure, who are going to try and short fill this to get a little bit of track position, but then we'll have to save. And obviously with it being a timed race, you've always got that, is it going to be one extra lap, is it not going to be one extra lap? You got to keep that in mind when you're making that last pit stop.
Indeed. We'll see how this plays out. As why don't we listen on board with the machine you're following along with here. This is your current GT3 leader, one of the newest cars in the iRacing service. Take a listen in. Then final on board with Marek Sakovic, as he continues to lead by a significant margin with the different strategy at the moment. Under 54 minutes to go on the clock for the Daytona 2.4 on the Global Sim Racing channel for the European region for the Major Series. So far, it's been a competitive one with various different strategies. Keep in mind that today was raced in support of the Wounded Warrior Project as well. Be sure to donate to them by going once again to woundedwarriorproject.org. Pit stops underway for Darwin Mites for Bombshell Racing Team. That's one of the GTE cars coming in for their expected final stop at the moment. There was also a scary moment, keep in mind, for the car we were following on board with. You may have noticed as there was a car that drove backwards on the racetrack. Colin Martzoff in particular. That gave him a bit of a scare. Other than that, things have been calm so far, Peter.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what happened or why he was driving backwards on the racetrack. The only thing is when you do, if you lose it at turn 1 and you get into a big spin, you can sometimes get a little bit disorientated, but usually should know the way around. Quite a strange one there, but we can see interesting Darwin Mites for Bombshell Racing taking tyres. 52 minutes left in the race, so see what kind of pace that car will be capable of. Interesting to take tyres that late in the race.
Absolutely. let's take a look at what happened with that incident we're referring to with Colin Martzoff that gave a bit of a scare to a couple competitors where he lost in the kink and then went backwards.
Oh dear. I think he's trying to line it up to do a flick turn, but kind of driving in the wrong direction. Of course, the headlights as well be dazzling the drivers coming towards him, and maybe should have just waited his time, dipped the clutch and whipped it round. But Colin Martzoff, I wonder if he'll maybe get a little bit of a telling off from the Major Series organisers for that.
We'll have to see. One of the Hanson brothers racing cars with a bit of a rough one, last in class at the moment. But first in class is about to get fun, Christian, because guess who is now within 2 seconds? Guess who's been half a second quicker now? Dallas Pataska. He just turned a 1:33.8 with the traffic even, and now Dallas Pataska nearly drove it off the racetrack.
Yeah, Thenison had a pretty bad lap last time around. I think he got caught up with a lot of traffic, but obviously that's just completely obliterated the gap between himself and Pataska, and Pataska's just been ruthless in terms of cutting his way through the traffic. And yeah, I thought it'd be a lot harder than this to run this gap down. I didn't think that we'd see him within 3 seconds this fast.
This was a similar pace, keep in mind, Peter, if you're keeping an eye on the Pro Invitational race last Sunday in the daytime with much hotter track conditions, where the drivers who took those rear tires were upwards of 1 to 2 seconds quicker a lap. We're seeing that right now from Pataska.
We are indeed, yeah. This is a car which you kind of need it to be at its absolute optimum. It's a real thoroughbred racer, and running it on old tyres is really a handful. And Pataska's putting these new Michelin tyres to very good use indeed right now. This Dallara, built by the eponymous manufacturer of race cars, led by Mr. Jim Paolo Dallara, who's now at the age of 83 and was one of the original designers of the beautiful Lamborghini Miura.
A lovely car, absolutely, and I know many people, when this car came out last year, were pumped up to see it on the surface, especially with its speed, its heyday for this respective chassis around the late 2010s. As traffic lets him on go, it's now under 2 seconds fully, 1.6, make it 1.7 seconds on the entry. One car in between them at the moment, that's Ray Partridge. Then there is some clean space to close up. There is some interclass traffic, though, that could come into play with Travis Henderson and several others who are up the road for these respective competitors.
Interesting, the GTE pack, the top 3 are now held within 5 seconds. Tim Klassen's had a little bit of trouble in traffic the last couple of laps. It's now down to 2.4 seconds between Klassen's in the 451 car and Ross Banfield in the triples, led all the way in the opening stint, was jumped in the pit stops by Klassen at the first pit stop. But any minute now, one of these drivers will come into pit lane. They're right in the window. They can take it any time they want now, and they'll be running on low fuel, I guess, wanting to maximize the time with the car on low fuel as well. But Ross Banfield absolutely on the charge and has had the rub of the green with the traffic the last little while. But look what's happened to Harrod. He was 5 seconds, now down to 7.7. So it's yo-yoing back and forward depending on how things play out with the traffic.
Absolutely. Now look, as the traffic actually passing by Ross Banfield's going to lose him a little bit more time right on back. That was Bobby Thompson. The total downforce car driving to his outside that time. And your head almost has to be on a swivel for this type of event, Christian, where if you don't have your head on the swivel, especially in the high banks, it can cause some problems if you aren't keeping an eye on your surroundings. And we've seen some close manners today. Most of the field, though, has been able to keep their eyes open to see what's been going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Traffic management's been kind of wild throughout the day. Obviously, we've seen some incidents already with LMP2s and some of the GT class leaders, in fact. Actually, speaking of the the GT3 class, Eric Nicky has now taken over the class lead, but that's because Sakowicz has actually come in for that shorter, not shorter stop, but he did that shorter run, so he's had to come in a little bit earlier as we expected.
41 seconds, though. 41 seconds, though, Christian.
Yeah, that's about the amount of fuel that he would have needed to take, and that's very similar to what the other cars in class took that took only fuel the last time by.
Seen him off and away. his respective service, so we'll see when the rest of the drivers peel off 24 laps into the stints for a majority of those competitors. To get back to the discussion, though, when it comes to that UDOX machine of Ross Banfield trying to close up that gap we were talking about a little bit, it's one of those series that, if you know the major series, is focused on charity, Peter. Today, the Wounded Warrior Project. Ross Banfield's team also representing Cure LGMD2I, which is a charity focused on finding cure for limb, girdle, muscular dystrophy. We're joining the Cure as a longtime associate for Simability as well, which is sporting a new look for this year as well. Charity, a big part of this series.
Indeed, yeah, and it's Simability particularly do a great job of creating opportunity, a form of impairment or disability to be able to race, and that's the thing is about sim racing, that accessibility is at its absolute core. I mean, running a Corvette CAR at Daytona would be a multi-million-pound project, but in sim racing you can hop in and off you go. And yeah, the charitable aspect is really important as well, and community very important amongst the sim racing world as well, and that's something you also see in the majors.
New race leader for the prototypes, because Dallas Pataska has been able to make the move for that spot on Mike Thieneson. And it came by quickly down the front straightaway, down this past time by, right before they got to the traffic in the infield. Let's take a look at that move as he made it look very easy. It'd be before the infield. Right here. Christian made it nice and easy, and he's pulled away already by more than a second.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we all knew that was coming. I don't think we expected it this early on, though, and it's just been kind of ridiculous, the rate of closure, actually. I think Thieneson's probably regretting that he didn't take tires that last time by, and I think we'll probably see him take tires on his final stop now.
Yes, indeed. We'll have to see as the car's around right in front of them. It's Brian Barney who went around, one of the V-Apex cars. We haven't talked much about that team today, but Barney is off and away in the 55. That was right in front of these cars just a moment ago. See what happened. It's been a common mistake today in turn one of drivers running too hot today, it seems, Peter, into the corner.
Yep, the easiest mistake to make. It's such a typical error here at Daytona International Speedway. They come through the trial wheel. Look at that, you're right at the very top, off top gear, then you've got to lean on these carbon brakes, and you've got to just almost turn and brake at the same time. Not easy, and just loses it, and woof, round it goes. That car not very happy indeed. But back with the GTE guys, that gap is closing all the time. Banfield now less than 1.5 seconds to Clayson, so he's getting close to the point where he will be able to pick up some draft. But you're just wondering, when are these guys going to make their trip to pit lane? We know they've got one to go, one pit stop to go, that is, but when are they going to take it? But tell you what, Banfield, he is in the groove right now at the wheel of that Corvette.
He's been really quick towards the closing stages of this race. Keep in mind that the fuel stint's approximately about 5 to 7 laps out. Banfield is going to have to pit 2 laps earlier, though, than his fellow competitor at the moment. Kurt Crum is elected to take his pit stop, by the way. Remember, he had some troubles early on. He was 32 laps into his stint. So if that keeps the math in mind, that math would put Banfield in 5 laps and Clayson's in 7.
I wonder if that's partly what we're seeing here, actually, with this gap coming down between Clayson's and Banfield. I wonder if Clayson's is trying to extend out to an extra lap in this stint again, try and make that difference 3 laps instead of 2, because the difference in fill time in the box is going to be relatively significant. So if Clayson's can get out far enough out ahead to be completely out of draft range, then I think that's going to help him out a lot.
It's going to come down to the math potentially even, Peter, because fuel is time in many different cars, especially in the road course series such as this. It could be interesting to see how much fuel they end up putting in.
Absolutely, it comes down to driving style as well. If that's one thing that Scott Dixon, of course, 6-time IndyCar champion, but also multiple winner at the Rolex 24-hour at Daytona, and he's renowned for being able to go around at lap speeds but also save fuel at the same time. Quite a difficult skill, as you see a real...
Oh, trouble! Dallas Pataska! Dallas Pataska's off on the bus stop! Your race leader in the 23 hit the grass and spun it around after passing by traffic. He's lost. And he was just trying to pass some of these cars you see up the road, and that leads to the mistake potentially here, Christian.
Yeah, so he clears the RSR quite easily, but looks like he drove in too deep to do it. Gets away with that, though, really, because he only looped it around, and yeah, obviously a big loss of time, but no damage to the car.
That's lost him now officially 8 seconds on the pylon with the traffic. So Pataska going to have a long way to go up the road to get back up to Mike. And now that strategy could get interesting now. Keep in mind as well that Thompson, Rumner, and Rajkovic have converged amongst each other again. Wolf and Puteklis have also converged amongst one another on the racetrack. So the prototypes are heating up right before the respective pit stops in a few laps from now.
Yeah, the prototypes are not long, maybe 2 laps or so until they're in for their, until their fuel window opens and they can get to the end of the race on a full tank. But Pataska, yeah, getting all kinds of squirrely there, going on to the banking. But he's had to push so hard for so long to make his strategy work that it was almost inevitable that just a little mistake might creep in. But as Christian rightly said, managed to make it without damage, which was the main thing.
And that time, no mistake in the bus stop. But the thing that's going to be really interesting is, can he do it again? Can he close 8 seconds again?
Well, I think from my perspective, I think the balance has actually flipped to Thieneson, because I think Thieneson takes tires now, or at least rear tires in the stop, comes out probably 5 seconds behind, but has that advantage that Pataska just had on him, and I think that makes it definitely a close fight. Arguably closer than the distance that Pataska had to run down.
Keep in mind that the organization Mike is running for is known for success in the international split, in particular, Peter. Once again, Texans, Fitzgerald Motorsport, known for having 2 teams in the national region this year who raced in yesterday's race. Mike elected to run in the European split, and so far has looked very quick. This is going to be big if he can come away with a big victory for this organization here.
Absolutely, yeah, this would be a really good win, and also maybe a little bit unexpected, but after we'd thinking Pataska was going to clear off into the distance there, but yeah, that little mistake is shaking things up quite a lot. But we've still got 39 critical minutes of motor racing left, and I think that's where it can really shake out. This is where things get a little bit more frantic. Drivers become a little bit more selfish with their line in the multi-class as well. Everyone's now very much in their own personal battles, so got to watch out for that.
For Mike, as mentioned, running on his own marks him as potential independent. Some of these drivers, such as we mentioned, Total Downforce, Riley Thompson, also marked in that mode. We could also put Andre Marchkovic in that grouping as well, by the way, for Team Pointenveld outside of this series. These drivers, though, have been connected to the hip all day, Christian, it seems. From start to finish, they've been close to one another, especially for the past hour.
Yeah, and I said that the draft kind of keeps everybody together, and I think this is no better example of it than that. Obviously, we saw Riley Thompson making a recovery drive and doing a very good job of it, but he's kind of pulling these guys along with him, I think, at this point.
Yeah, Rajkovic has been fairly impressive throughout the run. He's now the quickest car on the track, Peter.
Yep, absolutely. He certainly is. And what I'm interested in to see is, when are our GTE leaders going to blink? Because at the moment, that gap is it's just hovering between 1.5, 2 seconds, thereabouts. They can see one another, but who's going to blink first? Who's going to go to take that final spot? As we see Tim Claessens in the Banfield in the purple Corvette. You'll just see Tim Claessens just a tiny bit up through the road. There he goes through the bus stop. A little bit of GT3 traffic there in the bus stop, and that's a part where the slightly more advanced chassis and suspension of the GTE car really comes in. You don't want to get stuck behind a GT3 car there.
Lost him a little bit of time, but able to make his way towards the outside line goes Banfield. Well, Claessens able to hold on to the inside line, and he has traffic too, though. Eric Mickey, next car up to left for him, passes on by, makes it look easy. towards the inside lines, and here he kicked out the back end a little bit. In fact, Banfield, though, gained some time as a result of that traffic. The counterpoint, Christian, that they're going to have to pass right on by them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's obviously going to kind of factor into this as well. But I'm just keeping an eye on Ross Banfield, actually, to see when he's going to come down. Obviously, we're suspecting that he's going to be coming down earlier than Clayson's, and they're pretty much at that point now. So I expect them to see them come in any lap now, really.
And the next lap even, potentially for Banfield, as he's been pushing this entire run. Keep in mind, the prototype lead is down to under 6 seconds as well throughout this entire section, because the overall leader is just right behind these cars at the moment. Pataska ran 1:33.5 last time by. There is that prototype leader at the moment. Had to pass by interclass traffic Mike Golightly, who had earlier troubles in this race, who is 7 laps down from your overall race leader.
Yeah, not been a good day at all. But it was some surprised me, guys, is the attrition rate has been relatively small. I mean, the of the prototypes, most of the drivers on the lead lap all the way down to 10th, and then a handful just 1 lap down, and in GTE pretty close. Yeah, it's been a really good race all around for attrition. We haven't seen a graveyard in the pit lane of smashed up race cars, which can happen from time to time.
Ross Banfield's in, Eric Mickey coming in with them right now. So, pit stops underway for the GT3s and the GTEs. Mickey, remember, we had that incident in the first stint of his race where he had to take tires. The question is, how does Banfield play this out here, Christian?
Well, I think Banfield really has no choice. He's got to try and take the no tires here and just hope that he has some left. I think the interesting one for me is Mickey versus the number 8 BMW Sakowicz, because Sakowicz is still out on track and has made his final pit stop. So whatever the gap is at this point when Mickey comes out of the pit lane, that's really the gap that he has to run down to try and win this race.
Off and away goes Banfield, 25 seconds. Mickey off and away, 30 seconds. Eric Mickey, though, is going to be close with the number 8 machine on the racetrack. In fact, side by side with the 8 coming out of the pit lane just about. The gap has now closed up to only a couple seconds on the difference, with a little bit fresher tires now by a stint for the car in chase. There's the look of the stint difference, 41 seconds for Sakowicz, Mickey 30.4.
Yeah, I think that definitely puts the advantage to Mickey, because he's within draft range of Sakowicz at this point and with the fresher tires. So I thought it'd be difficult for him to run it down, but he's managed to do it, and he's vindicating his decision to take tires right now.
Dallas Pataska also came in during that time, had a 32.7 second stop, so no tires for him. Riley Thompson is now currently cycled to second for the time being, 44 seconds back of the prototype lead, who is still with Rajkovic and still having to pass by some of these respective cars at the moment. There's a look at Thompson in particular, so the window is open for the prototypes as well. Everyone having a pit at the same time could cause chaos here, Peter.
Yeah, it's going to get busy down in pit lane. You want to make sure you get a nice clean run in and out. Of course, the pit exit here at Daytona is incredibly perilous. You see in the cold of night here in the Rolex 24, they call it, well, can sometimes call it the Wall of Champions, because there's been some seriously prestigious names plowed into that pit wall. And when these guys are frantic to fight for position towards the end of this race, they've got to be careful coming out of pit lane. They will. The good advantage to have is they'll likely be on the same tire, so they'll still have plenty of heat in them, but they still have to take it raw, take it really easy, as we see the 58 Dallara coming Thompson.
Yeah. Tires for the 98 machine, though, Christian. He's elected to go up on the jacks. Remember, Pataska did not take tires for this closing stint of the race for the prototype. So, Mike Dindison going on a different strategy. Pataska's already passed by him on the racetrack.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether Thienison's taking 4 here or not, but this looks like a very long stop, so I'm suspecting that he is. I'm really surprised if he does take 4, though he is. Well, I'll have to see what the gap is here, but that looks longer than a 2-tire stop gap should be.
How about 15 seconds?
Yeah, that actually pretty much is, but that's kind of in between, to be honest. I expect the gap to be about 12 seconds. So 15 seconds is a little bit odd. I wonder why it was an extra 3 seconds there.
Oh, contact out of the pit lane! Niskanen making contact with Raleigh Thompson as they came out side by side in a 1-lane exit.
There you go. That's what we were worried about. It's when it gets busy in pit lane, you've got to have your eyes up. So they're coming out here in the GT3 car, almost like they were speeding in pit lane, and that is a bizarre incident. You really want to. I don't see the merit at all for the GT3 car to try and go past the P2. That's just silly.
If anything, that gives a penalty to Niskanen potentially with an unsafe pit exit, since you have to essentially stay within the lines of your pit exit. Really confusing there. We'll have to see what happens with Niskanen. Keep in mind, go lightly, Cologne, Gall, David, among some of the others who have all come into pit. Pete Harada's also come into pit, who's had a quiet final stint of this race. GT3 race lead, though, is going to get interesting now. Where currently Sam Harper is in the current lead. The net lead, though, is tight. Side by side down the front straightaway is Sakowicz currently fighting with Eric Mickey. Mickey, remember, took those tires at the end of his first stint after contact, seen him lose the lead for his respective class early on in this race. Not able to make the pass yet.
I think it's only a matter of time before Mickey does make this pass. Obviously closed that gap up really, really quickly. Came out of the pit lane within giraffe range of Sakowicz. Just clearly got more traction right now out of the first horseshoe. I wonder if he's going to try and send it up the inside into the second one here.
By the way, we're hearing from that contact, Robbie Thompson got a meatball flag on top of things, Peter, for that incident off the pit lane. So Thompson's in the second time, all while the GT3's fighting hard. Here comes a prototype to make it 3 wide. That was the dive from Mike Thieneson, driving right on through with the fresher tires. That helps a little bit as Mickey slides up the racetrack.
Yeah, that's an incredible amount of trust and bravery there. The two GT3s did a great job to hold line and hold station, allow that Dallara to slip through a pretty unconventional way to do it, but got it done safe, thankfully. And let's see if Eric Mickey, this plot to have earlier, to have a new set of tyres midway through the race is really starting to play out. And tell you what, if you've ran the first 2 hours of the race on the same set of tyres, they are well past their best now. And this is really coming back to Eric Mickey.
Mickey now looking to make the peak once again to the outside as traffic tries to cut its way on through. Bit of a calmer pack as Mickey having to take the outside line. It's been difficult all day to pass on that line.
Bit of Daytona side draft in here, I like it.
Trying a little bit. Dead even on the brakes. The bottom line, though, sticks for Sakowicz. He's back single file again. Here comes an air prototype. That's Mike Golightly that now has to get through.
This could be an opportunity here for Mickey, though, if he can follow the prototype through. If the prototype goes up the inside, which he does, forces Sakowicz wide. Mickey's going to slot in behind the prototype. He's going to be on the outside coming into the kink.
Kink sometimes can work with the side-by-side if you play carefully. Mickey elects to brake and go single file instead. West Horseshoe this time with 30 minutes to go, approaching 29 on the clock as Mickey forced to check out.
And yeah, Sakowicz just being very clever there. He knows that he's going to have to play defensive. Does not have any speed left in that car, with the tyres just absolutely shot, but doing a great job of parking that BMW M4 exactly where it needs to be to not allow Eric Mickey to get by with the slightly fresher tyres. We say relatively fresher, those tyres will still be past their best as well. It's just the relative difference as they head down towards the bus stop. Mickey gets a big draft going down towards the bus stop. It's going to be really tricky here. Oh, but Sakowicz late on the brakes, very late on the brakes, throws it into the bus stop and then parks it on the apex. Brilliant racecraft from the Team Mad driver.
Ryan Walker's in for his respective service. Robbie Thompson's still in for the meatball. Marcus Romner is in. Tom Drelling has also come in. So Sam Harper, the only person in this class yet to pit for the current lead. The net lead, though, is still side by side. Ryan Walker, though, with the strategy, could get into it. Only 25 seconds in the pit boxes. He might have something to say if things intensify here. Eric Mickey on the outside sends it hard into the brakes, misses the corner, as there goes Sakowicz back to the lead, all while Walker able to back.
There he is, though. Ryan Walker just coming out of the pit exit there as the leaders go into the International Horseshoe, but this is far from done. Here they go then into turn one. Sakowicz just playing it safe, holding that inside line, knowing he can't be bettered. and Mickey really pushing hard, and he's just got to be careful. He's got that lap speed, he's got that speed in the tyre, but with 27 minutes to go, he does have the time to do it. But tell you what, this is a brilliant defensive drive from Sakovic.
7 seconds the gap between Claysons and Banfield for comparison's sake. Dallas Pataska leading by 14 seconds for the prototype lead at the moment. This is the closest battle for the lead on track for the net lead. Sam Harper's already extended to 33 laps. He's gone in for his respective service. Keep an eye on the 52 to see how things play out with these cars now.
Sam Harper might come out in the lead here.
And especially since they're fighting so hard, Christian.
Yeah, I think what's gone unnoticed here is, obviously we talked about...
Oh, contact! And they now bumping and baiting Christian. This is continuing to play in Sam Harper's way to the point where he just took a 22-second stop. But the problem is he's got a late pit box. Early on a pit lane, rather, where he's going to have to take a lot of time in the lane.
Yeah, but he's going to come out miles ahead here. The front two aren't even at the flag stand yet.
So Sam Harper, as these cars have fought so hard, might be in the driver's seat for this class after running third much of the day. Traffic ahead for some of these cars still as Harper pulls off and away by a decent margin. Sakovic, contact! Mickey to the door! He slams to the inside wall, and Sakovic demolished on his car.
We kind of thought that there was probably inevitable contact going to happen there, and that choke point caught him out again. And I really think this is just hard racing, and everybody got really, really tight with each other. You see there, I think Sakovic thought that the corner was his. He was nose ahead, but Mickey, kind of rightly so, thought that he had right to be on that outside, and it's just so tight through there. You can't really get two cars comfortably through there no matter what, and this is just an unfortunate result of that.
It was a big risk there from Mickey. I don't know if the room was there in my view, but that's a real shame, because Sakovic was just really defending fair and hard there, and he's got huge damage. He went into the wall, absolutely. Well, it's some brute force there, and he's having to limp the car back. The whole front bodywork absolutely destroyed. Now, does he have a fast repair left? Can he get it to pit lane and get the spare car?
Thing is, it's still going to take him out of contention, but Sam Harper is in this class lead as talked about now. With all the intensity focusing on and an 8-second quicker pit stop, the 52 is now in the class lead over Eric Mickey.
Yeah, this is interesting now as well. I mean, now that could be critical to whether Sam Harper can escape and win this race, because Eric Mickey now, while he was parked behind Sakovic, that was perfect for Harper, but you've got to think that Mickey's just got a tiny bit more pace, and but not much time to catch that gap up. 8 seconds, and Sam Harper, the Scotsman with the David Coulthard-esque helmet and the salt tire on the roof. I'm going to be quiet now, guys, because I'm starting to sound like I'm not impartial.
Well, this is a Formula One podcast group, a little bit. It's as
no one's perfect.
You see some of the congratulations on the side of the car as well. By the way, Lane has competed in the series before, if you can read the text. Let's put it that way. But for Sam Harper, either way, it's going to be intriguing if he can hold on to this right now. Eric Mickey right now at the moment is currently exiting onto NASCAR 1. Sakovic is coming for the fast repair.
It's got to be disappointing for Sakovic. Obviously, he ran a great race, and he was well within his rights to be defending the way that he was, and realistically, it was the only way he was going to keep Mickey behind him, and I think it was totally fair. He was running the inside, both into the bus stop and into turn 1, and Mickey knew that realistically there was no way he was going to get around him on the outside, and I think a lot of times when Mickey went to his outside entering the bus stop, it wasn't really about trying to make that pass, it was more about trying to get Sakovic checked up so that he could then have a run down to turn 1, which he eventually did. And I'm still inclined to say that was a racing deal. I know that really, if you're behind at that point, you should probably be giving up the corner, but he was to his door. I don't think it's anybody's fault, but I do think that Mickey had right to be on that outside like he was.
Yeah. Your overall leader still is Dallas Pataska, by the way, and the thing is, despite the mistakes, and the strategy may come into play here, Peter, to where he might be in a good shot here of holding on with 13 seconds still. The gap only up to 3/10 quicker as Mike Dinesen currently, even in some of the cleaner space.
Yeah, cleaner space and, of course, the new tyres. I mean, over the next 22 minutes, we'll just have to keep a close eye on how that one plays out. Pataska's had some real streaks of pace throughout this race. Very, very impressive. Just to update on our GTE field, Tim Clayton's in the pit cycle there again, gathered a few seconds up on Banfield and leads, but he came into the pits with just about 2 seconds of an advantage, now circling around sort of the 7-second mark. Pete Harrod has been thereabouts in the Porsche all day, and bear in mind, Clessons and Banfield have run pretty much mistake-free the whole race, so and Harrod's been right there, and things always get more frantic in the last 20 minutes in the closing spot. Far from done.
Yeah, things are going to get intense for the final 21 minutes or so of this race. Keep in mind as well that this is not the only time these drivers are going to come to Daytona too. There's also the fact that, Christian, these drivers are going to be running in the 1987 Daytona 500 next month as well, so it's going to be a busy next couple of weeks for these drivers, where you're not only having to race in the road course portion of the racetrack, but you're also going to have to drive the 97 machines to try and see what they can do. And it's not an easy car to drive on the super speedways, mind you, let alone entirely the 1987 cars.
Yeah, absolutely. And the major series for the past couple of years has ran this 2.4-hour event that has then been followed by a modern Daytona 500, should we say. This year, doing it a little bit differently, running the 1987 cars. I'm a little bit disappointed that we're not running it on the old track, because there's so much fun around there, but at the same time, could be a little bit too much of a step too far. So still should be fun on this modern track, so to speak. And yeah, they move around a lot. Very different racing experience from the current generation of cars, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Over and under for caution flags. No offense.
I suspect we'll probably see one every 25 laps.
David Berkle, by the way, went around as we take a look at some of the other cars, including Harper. Keep in mind, he had that dominant stretch we talked about in the sportsman's class, and he showed some speed at times when he was in the pro races. So, for him, this could be a huge, huge mark for him, where he's won 5 or so in a row, if you include 2020.
That's a pretty excellent record right there. And Eric Mickey is slowly eating into his lead, but obviously we saw how difficult it was for Mickey to pass. And I think the more the clock runs down, the less opportunities. I don't think we should expect to see him even within striking distance until probably 10 minutes to go at the very earliest.
Is there going to be enough gas is the big question. I think some people may be wondering too with 22-second stop, do you think?
Well, he's been extending out to an extra 3 laps every run over the point that I thought was kind of the norm. So if anybody can do it, I think he's going to be able to manage it.
Let's take a look, meanwhile, at Walker. Ryan Walker. He's continuing to fight for podium. He's been in this fight all day. He's been running 4th, I think, for the past hour and a half, Peter.
Yeah, it's been a really solid run here from Ryan Walker in the Lamborghini Huracan.
Oh, it had trouble a little bit in front of them.
One of the Porsches, I think.
That was Franco Scurry, who's had a very quiet race today. In the 15 machine, 26 overall. Drives outside of the series for Pro Drive Sport, who locked it up as Dallas Pataska went to his inside.
So coming around the kink a really bit where the differences in the cars come to the fore, and it just sort of upsets Franco's rhythm there, and he's got a little bit unsighted there with the prototype. It does a great job not to contact with the tire wall, keeps the car at least straight in terms of the bodywork, and can carry on with his day. That's the spirit of endurance, as they say. But back to Ryan Walker in the Lamborghini Huracan. Well, he'll be hoping to channel his inner Sandy Mitchell. Of course, Sandy Mitchell, fellow Scotsman of ours, who He's just signed for the Lamborghini factory and will now be on the full roster of Works drivers and does the majority of his racing, of course, in this very car.
The defensive line that time in this battle as Cologne sees the send, watches the send as Walker makes the move. Walker 3 seconds less of fuel in the tank, right in time for your second place car, the prototypes, to drive by on the high side here. This will lose Mike Dennison a little bit more time as one car spins around it to the right. David Barraclough is having an adventure this final stage of the race. He was having a bit of trouble prior to this. He's had a couple spins today. This one could have been sketchy.
Yeah,
that could have been very sketchy.
Obviously, we've seen a couple of prototypes lose it on the entry actually there, so and he's obviously fighting for rear grip right here, and this is something that we've seen with a lot of the LMP2 drivers, that it's pretty much universally always the rear tires that go off first, and that's why the strategy of taking only 2 rears is quite viable.
Yep. Meanwhile, Walker, after that, has now pulled away. They have Scurry who's trying to get by them once again. That's going to impact this a little bit, but for Ryan Walker, now looking to take off as Scurry goes off into the tires.
Well, Ryan Walker's, he would have been twitching like a rabbit's nose there, because that was close. Very typical bus stop maneuver, and God, that wall is not far away. Of course, Elio Castroneves and Harry Tinknell both ended up in that wall early on in the Rolex 24-hour last year, and has prompted the now infamous quote from Helio Castroneves, where he grabbed the camera where he was being interviewed and screamed 24 hours at his competitor to remind him that it was maybe a bit early to take on such a move.
Scurry's finally made his way to the apron as we look at the battle for 7. The prototypes, Gruber and Puteklis are in close once again. Gruber, a very quiet run today for him in this race today.
Very quiet run for Gruber, actually. A driver that we've seen featuring inside the top 5 in many series is arguably having a little bit of an off day, I would say, today.
Returning to the majors, came off a win in the majors 24, had 2 more 24-hour race wins with Torque Freak Racing back in 2020. Known to be competitive both on the road courses and the oval tracks, hoping to show consistency, his team says, throughout the different disciplines this season. Keep in mind, as this fight continues amongst these drivers, back and forth, Gruber defending. Back on the ice side, though, making the move as Kinetic Racing Machine with the pole. So, back and forth for these cars. You see a bit of smoke coming up. That's one of the other cars locking it up. All while Sam Harper's lead has been reduced to about 5 seconds between him and Mickey.
So yeah, Mickey, he's really laying down that pace. It's now actually less than 4 seconds, so it's going to yo-yo back and forward with the traffic, but Eric Mickey's the one who's going to have to put all the risk on the line, and this is where that... now, guys, do we remember? Forgive me, I can't remember. Did Harper take tyres at any point during this race?
I don't believe that he did. I think he's done the entire race on a single set.
That could prove critical.
Very critical. Let's take a look at Mickey in particular. Remember, 1 stint pressure tires. He is on the double stint at the moment on those tires. And that in turn has led to a pace of 0.3 quicker a lap, Christian.
Yeah, and he's getting actually a little bit of help from a team car right now. It's the RSR in front of him in the GTE class, and it's just towing him along down the straights and allowing him to pull up on Sam Harper.
Take a look at the lap comparison. In fact, you can see this the past 5, and look at that. 1 second, half a second, 1 second, 0.8, 0.3. It's swinging more and more and more in Mickey's direction, even as you see the fall off reaching the 145s.
And look at this, Eric Mickey's got a fantastic draft behind this Porsche 911 RSR GTE car in front, which actually doesn't seem to be pulling away from him, so he's obviously maybe carrying a little bit of damage, as that Porsche should be in the class ahead, should be pulling away. No problem, but Eric Mickey's he's certainly been the man with the fastest car. He's been he's been getting the most pace out of it, but a little mistake early on is going to prove well, certainly proving pivotal at this stage, but might have saved it with that controversial strategy with the tyres.
And as traffic goes on through here, keep in mind that Kirk Crum is only reaching 170 on the corner exits at the moment. So that's going to be something to keep an eye with this, as now only a couple of car lengths, about 15 between them and the race lead. So that's going to intensify in the next couple laps. 12 minutes on the clock. Dallas Pataska still holding on by 12 seconds, Christian. After having some of the mistakes early on, he is right now in a spot where as long as he doesn't make any other mistakes, he can go back-to-back in this event in this class.
Yeah, I think at this point he's got enough in hand that Thieneson isn't going to be challenging him. I'm actually surprised that Thieneson isn't able to close up to him. Obviously, we saw Pataska was able to close up to him when this situation was reversed in the sense of tires. But yeah, Dallas Pataska definitely looks like he's in a commanding position right now.
Tim Claeson's, meanwhile, by the way, as well, Peter should say, is doing a really good job too.
He's doing a superb job, yeah, just managing that gap beautifully. It's hardly moved at all, just sitting around the 7-second mark. They've both edged away a little bit from Harrod in the leading Porsche, but great drive there from Pete Harrod in the Porsche, because it just seems that the Corvettes have maybe just got a minor edge. The Porsche's got a fantastic chassis. Now, I was speaking to Kevin Estra, one of the Porsche factory drivers, on Thursday morning, and he was saying, you know, with their car, it's got such a good chassis, but because of that, they get penalised quite a lot with the BOP from a straight line speed perspective to try and even the lap time out. So here at Daytona, that's of course not going to help you.
See blinking lights as some of the traffic goes on by. The LMP2 battle, by the way, is broken up a little bit for P7. Pateklis has broken the draft just about from Gruber. That's after some of the time picked up with some of the traffic this lap for the Kinetic Europe Pro Team. Kinetic Racing, always known for coming away with race victories, Christian. You've had experience with Kinetic in the past.
Yeah, and Joe is obviously an extremely good driver. I remember when we were running the IR18s at Detroit, and he was definitely the quickest of us when we were practicing, and I'm a little bit disappointed for him today. Obviously started 6th, and he is running 6th, but had that incident early on that he's had to recover from, and unfortunately for him, he's just never really had the opportunity to try and challenge for the victory or even a top 3 or top 5 here. So
yeah.
I don't think he's going to be too happy with how this race has gone, but I think he's showing some good pace right now, and he's done a great job recovering.
Absolutely, especially since he was as far back as dead last in the class after that first lap incident. Harper and Mickey are getting close. It's now within 5 to 7 car lengths. The teamwork car from Bombshell Racing Team is finally led on by Ryan Mayer. So now it's all between Harper and Mickey for the final 9 minutes for the GT3.
Yeah, slightly controversial circumstances there, maybe perhaps a bit of team cooperation. I wonder what the organisers will think of that one, but never mind for now. We're into the last 10 minutes of the race. Eric Mickey is in the draft range of Sam Harper, and I think this is where that ever so slightly fresher amount of
Ryan Mayer again between them.
Ryan Mayer going past in the Porsche now. Watch this down into turn 1. This is very, very interesting indeed. The Porsche is going to try and hang it around the outside. Seems a strange time to come out with a huge burst of pace all of a sudden.
He was clutch and coasting for half a straightaway before the bus stop. So things are getting dicey now, and very intriguing now. Mickey now looking to try and retake the race lead in this class. Estimated 5 to go for these drivers this time by, as now Ryan Mayer has ran away from these cars. Mickey poking to the outside, going for the switch. No, a bit of a bobble on the entry.
Yeah, I don't think that Sam Harper is going to be too happy about what's been going on here, and I've got to be honest and say I think rightfully so, really. We shouldn't really be seeing cars in faster classes towing another team car along from another class. I don't really think that that's fair sportsmanship, if I'm brutally honest about it. But still, we've got 7 minutes and 45 seconds to go, and I think that Sam Harper can still probably hold Eric Mickey off here.
Yeah, it's going to need some big-time defense. There is still a lot of traffic through. Might go lightly, who's had a adventure and a half today. Brian Barney still having to reach these cars. Also could be a factor here. So this could break up some of the opportunities by about a lap or so. There goes Go Lightly now to the outside. Barney may reach these cars by turn 1. Yalva Verde may reach these cars by the exit of the infield. But Mickey wants the pole now. 7 minutes to go. Mickey to the outside for Bombshell Racing Team. Inside line for Sam Harper for Missed Apex. Side by side. Mickey on the deeper brakes. Harper with the preferred groove. Harper, though, with a better line going through the kink through turn 2. Once again to the Rodriguez International Horseshoe as Mickey now with the preferred line of the switchback. Mickey takes the race lead with 5 estimated laps to go, coming to 4.
Yeah, watch out though, because as they come up towards the kink in the West Horseshoe, Harper will now be in the draft of Mickey. So let's have a look and see what effect that will have when they get up onto the high banks. Will that allow Harper to get back by? Got to think those tyres are absolutely shot, and also got to think that he's pretty miffed about that slightly, to be honest, questionable tactics. I have to completely agree with Christian's viewpoint on that one. Not the best sportsmanship, really, but that's really hurt Harper there. The prototype's coming through. That's just killed his momentum slightly, and maybe just lost the best of the draft there.
Yeah, but you have to think there's the chance of a counterpoint back for Mickey to lose the draft right on back, or lose some time rather on back. 7/10 still the gap between Sam Harper and Eric Mickey. 4 laps this time estimated. Under 6 minutes on the clock. Harper a little bit quicker into the bus stop that time, but had to really back it off on the apex.
I think he's looking like he's right on the limit of the draft right here. He'll be lucky to pull it to the back of Mickey as they get down to turn 1.
See, really trying to wheel it up. 170 miles an hour again on the corner exit for him. Mickey just reached 170 at the pit lane entry. Not close enough. Already still 5 car lengths the difference on tires.
Yeah, just that was proved critical, and just it was almost as if it was a bit of an insurance policy for Eric Mickey, because you know, he had such a good advantage. He clearly had good pace, and maybe thought he could afford doing that and have a slightly more raceable car at the end. But we've got to love this tenacity from Harper as they prototype up on the side. Oh my goodness me, but gets back on the track cleanly, thankfully. But that's just taking Eric Mickey's eye off a little bit, and Harper's on him.
That was Henry Bennett off the racetrack. That has opened up the door a little bit with that. Harper has now gained some time back in the braking zone, and now Puteklis and Bennett both have to pass by. George Gruber could reach these cars soon. Puteklis waiting until the NASCAR oval, though, to make the move. That could help the Missed Apex car.
Yeah, looks like it has. So traffic gives and traffic takes away. It was just 1 lap ago where Harper didn't quite get the rub of the green there, and it just forced him out a little bit. But as they head down towards the bus stop, maybe 3 laps to go, I presume, for these guys. So it's still all to play for here, and it's going to come down. It's that close that it could come down to a little shuffle out in the traffic, and Sam Harper doing a great job, I say, tenacious performance to hang on to the back of Mickey here with tyres that are way past their best and still hanging on the back bumper.
2 BMWs had a stellar fight in these closing stages. Harper was running third much of the day before strategy came into play, and now he looks to try and break on through. Eric Mickey tries to defend along the yellow line still. Now 4 car lengths the difference as here comes more of the prototypes. Dallas Pataska potentially could reach these cars by the exit of the infield this lap, with 3 estimated to go for these cars.
And Harper looks like he's really kind of sliding around a little bit through turn 1 there, but still doing a great job to hold on the back of Eric Mickey. As we see Dallas Pataska closing up, he's going to be alongside Harper surely through the kink here, probably clearing Mickey by the second horseshoe.
And yes, indeed, Harper gives some space. This could go towards the direction of Harper in the right timing, though. Bit of a tap on the brakes from Pataska as Mickey has to sacrifice the bottom. Harper just sent it hard as Pataska nearly sent it even harder.
Yeah, Pataska getting on the marbles there as well. You saw that once he was on them, the car just didn't want to turn. And that just took Mickey's eye off the ball slightly. and should allow Harper to get a bit of a run off onto the banking, which is critical to get the best out of that draft. So we're riding on board with this front engine inline 6 turbocharged M4 GT3, still a prototype at this stage. An amazing, absolutely amazing project to develop the car here on iRacing before it hits the real world racetrack. Fantastic stuff. You can see the Fanatec design steering wheel there as well, but it's BMW versus BMW, no BOP concerns here. And I have to say, guys, I certainly wouldn't have called it two BMWs fighting for the lead. If I was going to say it was two of the same manufacturer, I would have called the Lambo, I'll be honest.
Yeah, the Lambos are currently third on back at the moment, but these BMWs have been able to set the tempo in the closing stages, especially Mickey, who has been a dominant car all day, despite several incidents and differences on pit strats. Here comes some more prototypes to the outside. That time it's Colin Martzoff. 2 estimated laps to go that time by, and they have a lot of space. No cars expected to reach them this lap.
Okay, well, they've got a little bit of luxury to have a straight fight here then. Eric Mickey, he's going to be under a lot of pressure there as well. Don't forget, he had that little bit of contact there with the Team Mad car of Makovic, and got away with that one for sure, but Harper's still right on him, hanging on. Those tires must be on the threads.
And there's some more traffic there, right there. Tom Drailing actually gaining a ton of time on him, at least 15 to 30 car lengths as the lights blink for Sam Harper. That lost Harper some time. As a result, Mike Dennison has again reached these cars again, as now Harper inside, so does Mickey to that line. The prototypes drive by, and now these drivers expecting the white flag this time by, in what has been an intriguing one. Dallas Pataska has controlled the tempo much of the way in the prototypes. He now is expecting the white flag this time with 30 seconds on the clock, with a ton of traffic to negotiate for this final circuit. Claude Belval gives some space. Ryan Mayer now gives some space. Sakowicz and Henry Bennett, along with George Gruber, potentially could all get lapped in this white flag time around.
Yeah, so we're going to go into a little bit of overtime here. So if there's anyone who's really scared on fuel, they're going to be hoping they're following Dallas Pataska home. They won't want to go any longer than they have to. But this is when you're the prototype leader, that's not what you want to see. White flag, but then a whole bunch of GT cars to worry about. But Dallas Pataska, there's been a little worries here and there, but this has been a really, really streaky but fun drive.
Tim Clayson's just behind him, just passed by Eric Mickey, which made things interesting now a little bit for Sam Harper. A little bit diciness there, but Clayson's has also had a very clean drive today, Peter, as he now looks to run with some clean space, while Harper wants to keep the contest going by 1.1 seconds behind Mickey.
Yep, not giving up. Proper tenacity there from Sam Harper. It's been an amazing drive, and yeah, I think when he looks at the broadcast back, he'll be pretty disappointed with what happened there at the end. But here's Dallas Pataska coming through the bus stop for the last time, JP, and what a drive it's been.
He'll get through the last of some of the traffic here as 2-3 wide on his final time around. Bennett gives space, but for Dallas Pataska, for Satellite Racing, he'll go back-to-back. The VRS Satellite Racing car gets to celebrate. It's Pataska who wins the Daytona 2.4 for the prototypes by more than 14 seconds. From Tim Clayson's, meanwhile, a return back to form for Grizzly TFR Daytona. It was here where the partnership blossomed and started off with a checker flag in this respective class. Today, it's Tim Clayson's who will carry the flag and bring Grizzly TFR Daytona to the checkered flag. He wins at Daytona. All while Eric Mickey closes things off with an incredible drive for Bombshell Racing Team. He wins in the GT3s.
What a thrilling finish there in that GT3 category as well. Just impossible to call right there at the end. But in GTE as well, those two Corvettes, Tim Clayson's and Ross Banfield, absolutely flawless. Just 4 seconds between them at the line. And Pete Harrod, the top of the Porsches, what a great drive from him as well to get on the podium. No mistakes, but these two Corvettes were just too good.
What a race indeed. and the rest of the field still continuing to cross the way across the stripe. Christian, what a finish.
Yeah, I would say we definitely saw some great battles, especially throughout the GT classes, both of them. As we said, with the GTE cars, realistically, those top three just drove around together the entire time. And obviously, an interesting strategy by Eric Mickey to take tires, and I think he was vindicated by that. Obviously, had that incident early on go against him, and a little bit of a question mark regarding team strategy towards the end of the race, but I don't think that takes anything away from his performance itself. I think he was clearly the quickest GT3 driver today and absolutely deserved the win.
With that, we'll take a step aside. Post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments. You're watching the Global Sim Racing channel for coverage of the major series in the European region for the Daytona 2.4. Welcome back to the virtual Daytona International Speedway for coverage of the Daytona 2.4 for the major series in its European region here on GSRC in support of the Wounded Warrior Project. Overall, it was an interesting race to say the very least, from start to finish, from strategy to intrigue to drama and great finishes. It's Dallas Bataska, though, who takes home the overall and prototype victory today by 14 seconds over Mike Dinesen. Then Andrei Rechkovic finished in third. Wolf, Rollner, Valverde rounded out the top six. Buteklis finishes in seventh. The last car on the lead lap was George Gruber in eighth. Shane Norden, very quiet race today, finished in ninth. First car one lap down after starting 14th. David Barriclow rounded out the top 10 today. Then it is David Malnerich who finished in 11th. Richie Hearn 12th after some struggles in the pit stop cycles. Henry Bennett 13th with Ettore Galeno finishing 14th. Barney and Martzov rounded up the finishers in the class. The drivers who finished several laps down in the class were Mike Golightly, Tom Drailing, Travis Henderson, Riley Thompson, and Dawson Brock today. The GTEs, meanwhile, Christian, were interesting.
Yeah, very close battle in the GTEs all day long, and Tim Claessens comes out on top of that, just ahead of Ross Banfield and Pete Herod. The top three so tight together the entire race. Kurt Crum considerably further back in 4th place with Ryan Mayer, with that interesting strategy towards the end there in 5th place with Dick Mueller in 6th, Darwin Mites in 7th, Rob Gall, Franco Scurry, who we saw have that interesting incident in the bus stop towards the end of the race, and finally rounding out the end of the class, Ray Partridge.
Then, when it came to the GT3s, things were intriguing to say the least. As talked about, Mike Golightly is that wedge between them, but Eric Mickey came away with the checkered flag, 9 laps the difference from the prototype winner. Sam Harper finished in 2nd, with Cordo Colon rounding out the podium for the class. Ryan Walker, David H. Baker, your top 5, finishing inside the top 35 overall on the board. Marcus Niskanen, Malk Sakowicz, who was in contention for the win much of the race, involved in trouble late, ends up finishing 34th. That was in that crash with Eric Mickey for the battle for what was, at the time, it turns out, net P2. Then, Belval, Favrovsky, and Bob Beltrami, the Salami, rounded out the entrants on that class. As mentioned, the rest of the drivers were all drivers several laps down. All of them were prototype competitors. An intriguing one to say the very least, and some drivers who are going to be very happy with some of the performances in this one. As Tim Claessens now standing by, get the chance to speak with him now, as Tim is your winner in the GTEs today. Tim, first things first, how does it feel to be a winner again in the Major Series?
Hi, good evening, guys. It's been a nice return after taking a break for, I think, 2 seasons from the Major Series. And we just kicked in the door and came in with a blast with this for this one. It was a really nice win,
What was the strategy like for you in that car, especially since you were really saving and really riding behind Ross Banfield that entire first stint? How big was that saving for the Strats today?
I think eventually the first stint sort of made a big part of the race. I see we drove away with three e-cars at the start, and I wanted to give myself a little bit room to play with, so I tried to work together really well with Ross to both save my own fuel and think about myself. But also, if we decided to do a little battle later on, it would just be the 2 of us and not 3 cars. Just makes it a little bit less complicated. And the second and third stint, the first stint really helped in the second and third stint, just by way of being able to drive longer on low fuel, but also just having to take less fuel in the last one and really compound that gap and make it a real solid lead.
Overall, how big is this for the organization, especially since Grizzly TFR started working together for this race last year, started off with success at the time with David Barraclough. Now that success continues for 2021 with you.
I think this is a good start to start both the cooperation and the season off. That's partly why I rejoined again, because I really liked the way we were having a nice team effort or team championship for this one. So I really want to get on the ground floor for that and really help both teams achieve some nice wins and maybe an overall victory in the end as well.
Now, next race is the 1987 Daytona 500. Your opinion and thoughts on racing in the 1987 cars at Daytona on the super speedway portion?
It's gonna take some practice for sure. It's not really something I'm very used to driving ovals in general, and especially those oval cars. They're a completely different sort of world in how you drive them and how they are driven around the oval parties. Even it's no longer the easy go flat out for 3 hours. So it's definitely gonna take some practice. But it's also on the other hand quite fun because it does mean it's a little bit less like pure setup dependent, because it isn't just going flat out for a big part of the race. So I'm really looking forward to the challenge.
Anyone you want to thank for the run today?
Well, our beautiful car has all the sponsor on there: TFR Lab, Infinity Decals, and of course TeamSpeak for having some in-car communication. So those 3 sponsors, and of course the rest of my team. We really started building the setup already for the preparation for next week, of course. So it was a good start.
Congratulations on the class victory today, Tim.
Thanks a lot, and have a good night, guys.
Tim Clayton's coming away with the victory today over Ross Banfield and Peter Rod in the GTEs. Meanwhile, in the GT3s, it was Eric Mickey who gets to speak with Christian Challoner, who I believe has a lot of questions for him.
That I definitely do. But first off, let's start with a lot of the good things that happened in that race, Eric. You clearly look like you were the fastest GT3 driver. I have absolutely no doubt about that. You managed to make that strategy of taking tires work when realistically I thought that you'd actually lost the race at that point. Can you kind of talk us through why you made that decision to take tires? Because I felt like you had enough pace in hand that you didn't really need to take the risk of dropping back into the pack like that.
So I have pretty limited experience, particularly over the last couple of years in GT3s. But the last time I tried to go a full race without taking tires, it went really bad at the end. So I'm a little gun shy of that call. And I just kind of felt like what worked last year was probably best to stick to. So I just decided that it was better to just take the tires, knowing that the tire wear on that opening stint was going to be worse. As the track would rubber in later, and then do the extra, turned out to be about 33 minutes or so on without taking the tires later. So I just kind of committed to that strategy and was driving myself crazy, wondering if it was the right thing to do for the entire middle to end of the race.
It definitely looked like it made it a little bit more difficult for you. Obviously, at the beginning of the race, you kind of checked out on the field. You had about a 3-second advantage, and then you got caught up a little bit by an LMP2 car, lost all that advantage, but you were able to get back to the front. And then we saw you have that pretty great battle, actually, with Sakowicz in the 8 car for really a great number of laps, and he was doing a great job. And when you guys came side by side out of turn 1, I felt like that was a purely racing incident, because from my side, you had overlap on him, you were there. You mind talking about kind of how difficult it was to pass and what led you to, because that's a pretty risky part of the track to make a move. Was that kind of really your only shot at getting by him, do you think?
I don't know if it would have been my only shot. I think my tires being about an hour fresher than what he had, I think I potentially could have had another shot at it, but we were also losing a lot of time to Sam, who was up ahead, and I could tell just by the slight attempts that I made, the kind of trying to peek and see what I could possibly get done on him, that he was not going to make it easy to get around him. So when I saw him have that slip and I had that run, I got the call that I was on, that I had a car on my left side. I went back and looked at the replay when the contact occurred, and it was left front tire to right rear. So in my opinion, like he should have been aware that I was there, and particularly given the situation, all things considered, what we were racing for there and how we were racing. I think that, I think it's ultimately a racing incident myself. I think he should have known that I was going to have to take any opportunity I got, and that was the one that happened. So I just had to do it, and if it's protested, then we'll go through that whole process and deal with that as it is. But looking back, knowing that I actually had the overlap that I thought I had, I feel comfortable with the decision I made.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like you were definitely there, and you were up on the curb when the contact happened. So from my side, I think that was definitely just a racing deal. You guys were going at it pretty hard for a good number of laps, and there'd been a little bit of contact in the bus stop before then, but I think it was just a case of it was just close racing, and unfortunately for Sakowicz, it went badly for him, and he got turned into the fence. Now, once you were up into that second spot, you obviously had that gap to run down to Sam Harper, who'd come out well ahead of you guys after that last pit stop. And I have to say, there was one moment where it looked like you had a team car actually towing you along, and was that actually a plan that was happening? Was there something else going on with that RSR? Because the RSR is 10 to 20 kilometers an hour faster down the straight. From my side, there's no way that you should have been able to keep up with him.
He didn't have anything, or he felt like he didn't have anything left to gain in the race without a mistake anyway, taking out, I think it was Pete Harrod ahead of him. And the whole goal is team points, best finish possible, rack up whatever we can. And so that I didn't think that I had the pace at that point from the state of my tires to run down Sam. That was a decision that was made to try to help me close the gap. And as soon as I think it was Ryan, our other teammate, got to 5 seconds behind Kurt said he was going to take off, so that he didn't have to give up position to Ryan, and because he's going for the drivers, points. But he, that was the decision that was made, and we are not aware that that type of thing would be. I know there's obviously people who prefer or not prefer it, but I don't think there's any rules about something that we did. We didn't really interrupt anybody's race. It was just a strategic call that we made because using the cars we had on the track.
I definitely think it will prove to be a controversial move. I know from my side, I did understand it from a team play aspect, but at the same time, I felt it was definitely the very, very limits of what I would consider to be sporting, if I'm brutally honest with you. But hey, I do think that you had the pace to win the race regardless of that, and I think considering some of the incidents that did happen to you that set you back, I don't really think it takes anything away from it. I just think it's probably going to be a controversial point in the Majors Discord, and I suspect that we're going to see a lot of conversation about that. But obviously, it sets you off in a good position for the championship with the class win, and next time out, 1987 cars back here at Daytona. Not on the old track, unfortunately, as disappointing as that is to me personally. But still, I think that should be pretty fun. What are your kind of thoughts on that?
I'm really looking forward to that. I was a big proponent of that race being the Daytona 500, using those cars this year to change it up from the other cars. I think they're going to be a handful enough to on the smooth track versus having to put them on the old track. So I'm all right with that decision. But yeah, as far as the team orders thing go, the conversations can be had. People can talk to me if they want to talk to me. If it's against the rules somewhere that we're not aware of, then fair enough. We'll deal with that. We'll take whatever the necessary action would be for that. But we're out there trying to win a team championship because that's kind of where our best efforts are. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm comfortable with the moves that were and decisions that were made today. Otherwise, barring any rule infractions that I just wasn't aware of that we shouldn't have been doing. So, I'm okay with other people disagreeing and just move on to Daytona and see how things go.
Okay, well, we'll definitely take a look at that, and thank you for coming in and chatting with us.
That was Eric Mickey, and we have an update coming in from the Team Matt representatives from both the driver and one of their team principals. They will not be protesting the incident with Eric Mickey, and I quote from Sakowicz, "Just happens, we've done on this pace, and I think and all he deserves the result." Ross Banfield's now standing by. Ross, how are you feeling about a strong run for you in your class today?
Pretty good. Wanted first, but I'm happy with second. It's a good way to start off the season.
Now, want to talk to you about what happened in the middle stints, what happened pace-wise there, especially the different strategy-wise compared to you and Tim.
So it was a little bit of the X factor of multi-class racing. It seemed like I was getting kind of overtaken by some aggressive LMP2s at the kink, and he was getting caught at the straight. So while I was reeling him in, maybe like 2 seconds, I'd lose 3 seconds to someone dive bombing like 2 laps in a row. And the draft really kind of hurt me in the end because that 3-second gap he got at the beginning of the first stint happened to be the exact same gap that he finished the win with.
Indeed. Next race, Daytona. Your thoughts on racing the 1987 cars?
I'm looking forward to it. It's definitely different from what we've done historically here at the majors, so it should be fun. And like you said, it's not really a setup car. It's more of a driver's car. And without the restrictor plate, it should be interesting seeing how the cars are going to be drifting all along the track.
Anyone you want to thank for the run today?
Yeah, there's the guys over at UDocs. Really good team atmosphere over there. Kind of helped with the setup. We kind of picked and planned some strategies, which really helped. I don't think I would have ended as P2 or even fighting for the lead potentially if it wasn't for the strategies. So shout out to them.
Congratulations on the run today, Ross. Ross Banfield second in the GTEs today, while meanwhile, Ryan Walker, one of the talking points of the day, finished in the top 5 today in the GT3s. He's standing by with Christian.
Ryan, looked like a pretty good run today. Obviously, one of the faster Lamborghinis out there, and you've had a good strategy. You made it work. Came away with the top 5. Got to be happy with that, right?
Yeah, my first race in the majors. That's better than I hoped for, and yeah, I was in contention for a podium, but unfortunately made a mistake in turn 1 just over the bump and lost the rear, but managed to get going and finished in P4. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that for my first race in the series, in the major series.
Yeah, it definitely looked like it was pretty tight for that P3, and I know how kind of disappointing that is to lose out on that by just the tiny margin that you did realistically over the 2.4 hours to only be within 2 seconds at the flag. So that's unfortunate, but at the same time, as you say, you kind of went into this with not really any expectation, right? And you executed a good strategy, and there was a couple of drivers out there who made the decision to take tires within the race. What were your kind of thoughts on that? Do you think that it was necessary to take tires? Do you think that those guys had an advantage because of it, or do you think it was pretty even, or maybe even detrimental to not take a set of tires?
I think it just depends how. I think anyway, it just depends how hard you are on the tires. If you punish them or really aggressive, I find I'm not really an aggressive type when it comes to tires and just abusing them. So yeah, I just decided to not take tires, and I found it actually worked. And the difference with not changing, I found the tires actually lasted for quite a long time and could last easily 2 stints. So I found anyway it was a correct decision not to take tires, but other people seem to still benefit from taking them. So I don't think there was a massive difference, but I found anyway for strategy, I find it was the correct decision not to change.
Well, I definitely agree with that, and I don't mind saying it, but that's definitely my plan for the race later on tonight, to not take tires and to go the full distance without a tire change. I feel like it's the best in terms of track position, and I feel like it's on pace. It's actually probably the quicker way as well. Now, a lot of traffic out there tonight, obviously a lot of P2s out there. Did that kind of make it a challenging race in terms of dealing with those guys? And obviously it's the responsibility of the faster car to make their way around you, but we both know that sometimes you have to make sacrifices with the line and whatnot to avoid being in an incident, or to actually kind of facilitate the passes themselves. And can you kind of talk us through how you deal with that?
When it comes to getting lapped by the faster class cars, especially the P2s, I just keep telling myself, don't panic, just do my thing, and they'll find a way around, and don't do anything too hasty, like move offline. Just stay online and just make it predictable that you're staying online, and you'll make it easy for them to get by. So it seemed to work, and also it seemed to help as well with fuel saving in the first stint, because I was able to save enough to do, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 laps extra, but it worked out. And yeah, everyone seemed to be fairly good when it came to being lapped. And there was a few close calls, but that's just the sort of thing you expect in multi-class racing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned about the fuel mileage. Obviously, that was something that we saw a lot of drivers trying to extend out to. And yeah, you did a great job extending out those stints, and you were rewarded with the 4th place. And well, next time out, 87 cars, we wish you the best of luck, and thank you for coming and chatting with us.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the broadcast.
Again, that was Ryan Walker. I'd like to thank him, Tim Claessens, along with Eric Mickey and Ross Banfield for taking the time to speak with us. Very quickly, Christian, you mentioned it yourself. Coming up is the Americas region race. Your thoughts for that one, for those drivers in this one, and then for the 1987s for everyone else after?
Well, I feel like the caliber of field is very similar between the Americas region and the European region, especially for this race, with it being essentially a road course race, and one that everybody has done a lot of practice for, no matter what discipline you're from. So I think we should expect to see a very similar race there. Obviously, strategy played a big role in the European race, and I think it will definitely play a big role in the Americas region race as well. The 87 car at Daytona is a completely different beast from what people are used to with the modern series car. Obviously, the modern car, you can run very, very closely. You can run 2, 3, sometimes even 4 wide quite safely. You definitely can't do that with the 87 car, and I think we should expect to see some people caught out by that, especially drivers who aren't familiar with that type of vehicle.
On that note, we'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's exciting action from Daytona, and like to thank the Major Series for organizing this amazing series. We'd also like to thank the companies who provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed up on screen. An additional thanks to Jude Warner provides her wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. I'd like to thank the team today once again, and Peter, Christian, and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Like to support the channel, you can check the merchandise for sale at gsrc.stormby.com or check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to our YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button as well as the notification bell so don't miss a moment at the Global Sim Racing Channel. As talked about before, the next race is going to be a wild one. It is the 1987 Daytona 500. That takes place February 21st, 2021. Be sure to tune in. Coverage starts 11:45 p.m. or a.m. Eastern Time, 5:45 p.m. GMT. Also, keep in mind that the Majors has its American region race coming up at 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time on GSRC. For the pro side, ESPN for the sportsman's class. Be sure to tune in for those races. It's going to be a fun one to start off their campaigns tonight. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on your screen, so check those out and mark them down your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.